This is the Decibel Geek Podcast with Aaron Camaro and Chris Sinzak.
All right, welcome back to the Decibel Geek Podcast. Chris Sinzak, Aaron Camaro, back at you once again. And, you know, earlier this week, Chris, you put up a thing on the Facebook page where all our listeners go to and discuss all the rock and roll happenings going on here in Decibel Geek world. And you put up a picture.
Yeah, I put up a collage of a lot of amazing rock and metal albums from over the past 30 years, and they all have a common theme. And we had some interesting guesses from people. And,
yeah, there was a lot of guesses. I saw a lot of people doing a lot of wishful thinking. They're looking for another year in review.
Yeah, year in review, or bands that deserve more airplay than Nickelback. And then one person said, what's the common theme? And then, but we did have one guy guess correctly, sort of, and we're going to make him Geek of the Week this week.
Absolutely. Steve Boykin was the first guy to nail it. He said it's Mikey Wags. You ever been called Mikey Wags before?
No. I've been called Wags before, but not Mikey.
So, yeah. So we're not going to call you Mikey Wags. We're going to call you Michael Wagener.
Yeah.
So,
actually, Zach calls me Mikey.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So for everybody else, you want a year in review, we'll see about getting to that before the end of this year.
Yeah.
But tonight, you're in for a special treat because we've got something way better than a year in review show. We are here with Michael Wagener.
Yeah, and we're on location at Wireworld Studio here just outside of Nashville. Michael's been here for, 96?
Yeah, well, I've been in Nashville since 96, but here at this location since 2008. Roughly.
Okay.
2008 is when I started building the studio.
And this place is amazing through here. Like I say, it's half recording studio, half rock and roll museum, and all awesome.
It's an impressive place to be. One day we hope to have a studio like this one.
Yeah.
But we have to sell a
$1
few
million
albums.
later.
Yeah, he looks at us like, good luck.
Yeah. I should also mention this episode is being produced by Michael Wagener because of my incompetence in forgetting to bring a laptop.
Yeah, well, that's
so I'm getting royalties on this one?
Yeah, sure. You'll get 10% of what we make, which is nothing.
Right.
Well, I win something and finally get my amnesty from the Moose Kento situation.
Yeah, because now I did it. Yeah.
Now we're even.
Yeah. Well, and then I guess I'm in the lead because I botched the first time recording Toby Wright's interview also.
That's true. So now you're
another Nashville.
Yeah, Toby and I we worked together way back on the second Dokken album. He was actually the assistant at Cherokee Studios.
Right.
He was great to have on the show.
Oh, he's a great guy.
Yeah. What was he like back in those early days?
Well, he was just the assistant and did his job, did it very, very well, and probably watched what was going on.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what made him what he is today,
Did you think you guys would both wind up in the Nashville area?
Oh, I didn't think about anything at that time.
Just working on the next one.
How to pay the rent was the main concern.
Yeah, absolutely. And and Cherokee Studios has quite a history from back in those days. And so you were full on witness to that. I want to go back a little further though. You mentioned Dokken, and from what I've read, Don Dokken was kind of partially responsible for getting you over here to America.
Yeah.
And where are you from originally?
Germany.
Yeah,
Germany. I had a studio in Hamburg, Germany. Well, I got to go back a little bit more. I was working in a company called Stramp, like that amp up there.
Yeah.
And we're building. Actually, I built that one in 1975. Nice. And we're building this and studio consoles and and stuff like that. So we had a little studio where we did demonstrations of our gear, and I figured out that working with the gear is much more interesting than building it.
Right.
And so I got together with a bunch of people and that had some money, and we built a studio in Hamburg, Germany, and the studio was called Tennessee Studios.
How ironic.
It's very ironic. The name of the band was Tennessee, and it was a god-awful country band, German country band.
Wow.
But the guys had some money. They all had real jobs, and so we built a studio, and that's where I started. And the studio was connected to a disco. on the other side of the house. And then Don, or Dokken, would play in that disco, and then we would record it. And after the show, Don would come to the studio, and that's how we met. Mm-hmm. And from then on, we went for 76 hours recording demos.
Wow.
Which became the record Back in the Streets.
Wow.
Nice. Which went to number 2 in England.
Yeah.
That was a bootleg. That was just demos. They're never supposed to. And that was my very, very first ever rock recording.
Wow. So Dokken took off in England way before they did in the States?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Really?
Oh, yeah. And then in France.
Yeah?
And Germany. And then, to finish the story, Don and I, we hit it off. Mm-hmm. And he invited me over. He goes, come on over, and you probably get a job over there, and blah, 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 blah. Back then, it was, easier to get into the country.
Yeah.
So I came over in 1979.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it, and I decided this is where I want to be. And it was
Los Angeles, right?
Redondo Beach, yeah. And then I started working in a studio called Total Access over there with Don, but the economy wasn't that good back then, so I went back to Germany, came back and forth, did Great White, Malice, and all these, those bands in between, X.
Yeah.
And then, X was actually the deciding factor when Tom Zutaut from Elektra called me and said, hey, why don't you come over and do a single with X? And we did Wild Thing.
Yeah.
And X was an underground punk band.
Yeah, John Doe, right?
Yeah,
the bass
John
player.
Doe, Exene Serenka, Billy Zoom. And so we, from then on, I was supposed to be here for 2 weeks to do that single. And I got one job after the other. I'm still here.
Yeah,
basically,
still got jobs lined up.
Yeah.
and before all that, you were working with Udo and Accept, weren't you?
Well, I grew up with Udo.
Yeah.
And we actually found Accept.
Oh, okay.
I was a guitar player in Accept in the early version before 1970.
I was fascinated to read that. I had no idea that you guys went that far back.
And it was called Band X at the time, and then Udo and I, we came up with the name Accept, and then I got drafted. So that was the end of that for me. And then a little later, Wolf came in and took over from there. And
Wolf lives out here, doesn't he?
Yeah. He lives about 3 miles from here.
That's incredible.
4 miles from here.
So you lived in Los Angeles for quite a while.
12 years.
And I wanted to ask, and I understand that Nashville's a pretty awesome place. Mm-hmm. But I'd read that you really loved it here. What was it, the first time you visited, or however it was you decided to stay in Tennessee out of the scene, in L.A.?
Well, it's a two-sided thing. Mm-hmm. How much did I want to leave L.A. and go somewhere else, you know? Yeah. I was in L.A. for 3 earthquakes, 6 floods, 3 mudslides, 4 fires, and 2 riots.
Yeah.
That was the 12 years I was there. So,
that'll do it.
And the economy there is not that good. Everything is super expensive and way too many people.
Yeah.
If you drive on the freeway for 10 miles, it takes you over an hour.
Yeah, it's insane.
And that doesn't matter what time of the day or night it is.
Yeah.
So it was too much, and I decided. And then I came here, and we did the last Accept album, Predator.
Yeah.
The last one with Udo.
Right.
And, we did that here on 16th Avenue Sound. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love with Nashville. I go, why again am I in L.A.? And so I made the decision right then. And that was right after that big earthquake that I was 2 miles from.
Right.
Wow.
In Northridge. So I made the decision I'm going to move here.
So I guess it basically carried all the industry stuff you could want, but still not be without the chaos of
by
LA.
now, in 96 we had the internet.
Right.
You
can do it from anywhere.
To me, my clientele is international.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where they go. Mm-hmm. It's actually better if they go here because it's a little bit more cheaper.
Yeah.
Hotels and all that is cheaper here.
Right.
And this is Music City.
Yeah.
Music City, that everybody understands music here.
Yeah.
And so far, all the people, even Lordi from Finland,
I'm trying to picture Lordi walking the streets of Nashville.
They did. I got
That's
video
incredible.
of it.
Nice.
I got video of it, yeah. They like it here.
Yeah.
They have to travel no matter what.
Right.
So they might as well travel here instead of New York or L.A., where it's super expensive.
Right. Well, and I've talked to this. I think I told this to Ryan when we interviewed him. And I've told this to other people. It's crazy because it's like, and this is not that we're a local Nashville show, but just when I grew up here. So imagine me being, when I was 12 years old, the Sunset Strip was exploding. All the stuff was going on in the 80s. You were putting out a lot of stuff that I listened to when I grew up. And
that was you.
Yeah, it was me. I'm the guy who bought all that
you
stuff.
Bought the, oh,
yeah.
you two
yeah,
bought
we
I bought a couple.
I bought Under Lock and Key 2 million times. But
I love that early Great White.
Yeah, so I had a very romantic view of Los Angeles in those days. Like, that's where I want to go. Yeah,
it totally was.
Yeah.
The rock scene was there. It was super, super cool.
Yeah, but like I never could have ever envisioned, like and that's part of why I started this show, because I was like, I'm living here and half the people I want to interview are here. So but I never, if you came and told me at 12 all these people that I grew up listening to and worked on all these great projects would come and live in Nashville, because Nashville in 1987 is not like Nashville today.
Well, no,
I
mean, in '96 it was not like.
No, it wasn't.
Like
It's
like a third of the people.
Yeah, and but I mean, but the openness about other stuff other than country and bluegrass.
Yeah,
because when I was a kid living out here, you would get rock shows at Municipal Auditorium, but other than that, it was Grand Ole Opry, Roy Acuff, George Jones, and nothing wrong with that, but that was all you were force fed.
Right.
So to be sitting here talking to you in this awesome studio about these great albums that you made, and yes, folks, we are going to get to these albums, and don't think that we're going to be able to squeeze them all into an hour, but we're going to do our best.
We'll try.
But I just got to say, it's awesome to have you here, and I'm glad you like the city as much as you do, because it's incredible to see all these people moving here. And but yeah, I guess because by the time you left LA, a lot of the rock scene had kind of just fizzled out at that point, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, it started like in '92 with Nirvana.
Right.
Everything flopped around a little bit, and it got to a point where, and I'm not talking about Nirvana, but all the follow-up bands, where music got like, it was not really good anymore to me. I mean, the quality of it. It didn't matter if your amp was humming, if you're singing off key, and you're playing out of time, or your guitar's out of tune. And I didn't want to do that.
Right.
The 80s, you might like them or you might not like them, but people rehearsed, people were practicing, and they did their job.
Right.
They did their craft.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it was just like, it doesn't matter anymore. So I got out.
Right.
I got out for like 4 years and went into video. And back then, I had the vision that audio and video is going to come together at some point. Well, which turned into the DVD.
Right.
Yeah.
And with MTV and all that, that had to come together. Yeah. So I went into video to learn a little bit about that, and basically got out. And then 95, I got here and kind of got back in.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, now I'm going to be hidden somewhere in Nashville and totally in the country.
Yeah, this place is hidden.
It's not even this. It's 18 miles out on Wolf Hoffman's farm.
Oh, okay.
That's where I started.
Right.
Oh, wow.
It's totally in the boonies. Yeah. and nobody knew where I was, and so I go, well, it's going to be no. People found me, and it went haywire from there.
Really?
Yeah. First 3 years were maybe a little bit calmer, but around 2000, it went one after the other. It was like back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And it has never stopped ever since. I'm still working sometimes 16, 18-hour days.
Wow.
And full projects.
That's great.
I'm working completely different than the normal work thing is in Nashville.
Right.
I do full projects. Bands are here for 2 months. It's not like, okay, it's a 3-day booking and this and no. We do whole albums.
That's
Excellent.
cool.
And there's mixes and sometimes now lately once in a while there's a bunch of EPs in there, 4 or 5 songs, but it's still like a full project.
Because even back in the day when you got an album or even a cassette or a CD, you'd say this album has a certain vibe to it.
Yeah.
And nowadays, if you're recording this song here and you're sending it there, and they're recording a couple of here and a couple there,
and the musicians are not even in the same room, or the same city.
How can you get a vibe out of something like that as opposed to a place like this? Where
and you got 4 or
here.
5 producers.
Yeah.